Hey there, my name is Bill Marion, and this is A Nose for Life. This past week, a faithful subscriber to the channel sent us a message about the possibility of having to pay for parking while visiting Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Over 12 million people visit Smoky Mountain National Park each year, making it the most visited national park in the U.S. And it's the only national park of its size in the country where visitors don't have to pay an access fee. In this video, we're going to talk about the possibility of paying to park in Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And to do so, I'm going to have to talk about national park entrance fees altogether. And I don't mean to sound like Captain Obvious, but people love U.S. national parks. But I'm always surprised by how much people don't know about our national parks, or how people make assumptions because of misconceptions. If you love national parks, you're going to love this video. And welcome to our channel. We make a variety of video content, but most of the time we're somewhere in the mountains. And that's why this topic is so important to our channel. This is a bigger deal than you might think. You want to make sure you stick around to the very end. You're going to learn a thing or two and see some amazing scenery. So go ahead and hit the like button. Your comments are appreciated and welcome, and I left links in the description. I talk fast, so buckle up and let's get started. So here's the general idea about what's going on right now when it comes to national park fees. Most U.S. national parks are free all year long. There are 423 national parks and only 116 charge an entrance fee. Park fees vary, but they're somewhere between $5 and $35 per vehicle. Officially, national park entrance fees are used to help offset the cost to run the park. The National Park Service states that 80% of each national park fee is used in the park to which the fee is paid. The other 20% is used to benefit parks that don't collect fees. And that's kind of weird and even political, and we'll get into some of that later. Depending on how much time you spend in national parks, you can save a little money by purchasing an America the Beautiful Pass. This gives you access to more than just national parks. It includes access to 2,000 federal recreation sites. So, now the question, what's the big deal if Great Smoky Mountain National Park, by far the most popular national park, is charging fees? After all, 119 other national parks charge fees. Okay, let's be clear. Great Smoky Mountain National Park is only charging parking fees, not entrance fees. And as of the making of this video, it's not official. Not yet. It's just a proposal. But as we'll discuss later in the video, these parking fees might be a little misleading. Here's what's being proposed. Anyone who wants to park their car, truck, or motorcycle in Great Smoky Mountains National Park will soon have to pay for a parking tag called a Park It Forward Pass. Let's just start with the name Park It Forward. Bad marketing. Read the room, people. It's probably a bad idea to start charging fees where there have never been fees before, and then call it something that may come across kind of preachy. Many people visiting Great Smoky Mountain National Park are returning visitors. Trust me, these folks aren't going to be too happy about this. For most returning guests, the park seems to be doing just fine without the fees. So the preachiness of pay it forward isn't going to help the buy-in. They should have just called it a parking pass. It's straightforward without the preachiness. Anyway, the plan isn't too complicated. The parking pass would work on a 3-tier system. A full-day parking tag would be $5, a 7-day tag would be $15, and an annual tag would be $40. There are 4,500 parking spaces in Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Now, a lot of people just drive through the park. Carolyn and I have done that before. But to really enjoy the experience to the fullest, parking is a part of it. It's a get-out-of-your-car kind of place. This proposed fee is $10 less than the other national parks that charge parking fees. So what's the big deal? Doesn't this make sense? The park's gotta make money to cover maintenance costs, right? After all, over the past decade, visitors to Smoky Mountain National Park have increased by 57%, and that number is going to continue to climb over the next decade. If you've been to the Smokies in the summer, you already know how crowded it is. Sometimes you can't even find a place to park, so many people are forced to park on the side of the road. Unfortunately, these new fees don't guarantee or reserve parking, so it's possible to pay a parking fee and not find a parking place. And officials state that roadside parking would be eliminated to help protect resources, improve motorist and pedestrian safety, and improve traffic flow through congested areas. So, visitors are getting parking fees with fewer places to park. Great Smoky Mountain visitors are paying for something that was free and getting less of it. Still, how can this be controversial? I mean, we're protecting resources and making driving safer, right? Let's back up. When it comes to the history of national parks charging fees, there is a lot of history and lots to read. And to save you time, I've read through a lot of it. But if you're curious, you'll find most of the information I'm providing in this video in the description. The original idea for the national park system was brilliant, and to be fair, it wasn't just one idea. Early on, there were multiple ideas, concepts, and philosophies. And we must place all of those involved in the creation of national parks in the context of their time. Some were naturalists, and there were conservationists and environmentalists. But most of all, it took businessmen. That's why it should never be assumed that most of the folks directly involved with the creation of the national park system would fit in with modern environmentalists. Some of these people who helped create national parks might not have even supported clean air or water legislation. This was a different time. In the early years, national parks were seen for what they really are: amazing and beautiful economic engines for local economies. These folks were different and might be in opposition to aspects of the modern national park system. Certainly there were exceptions, and these exceptions make up the official national park historical narrative. And it might even be the case that the business folks at the time used these exceptions to promote their ideas. For now, that's just speculation, and that would be a great video for some other time. But I think we can all agree that for the most part, the national park founders seem to have had the best intentions. Generally speaking, there's no reason to doubt the official narrative as to how these amazing places became national parks. And to some extent, it's always been understood that access or user fees are necessary to fund national parks. Because from the very beginning and continuing to this very day, funding national parks is a real issue. Access fees have been around national parks from the beginning, but the idea was to keep national park access as free as possible or as inexpensive as possible so that everyone may be able to enjoy the parks. In case you didn't know, to create many of these parks, tens of thousands of people were removed from their homes. Where we see vast wilderness areas now, there were once vibrant communities. The creation of national parks was controversial, and it wasn't an easy sell by any stretch of the imagination. Economically, the creation of national parks was all about supporting the local economy. Let me give you a modern example. In 2020, the 12 million people that visited Smoky Mountain National Park dumped over $1.3 billion in revenue to communities near the park. That's $1.38 billion invested into local economies during a pandemic year. But it's bigger than Great Smoky Mountains National Park. National parks across the country generate 234,000 jobs. This contributes $28.6 billion to the U.S. economy every year. But national park fees have never kept up with the cost to maintain the parks, much less provide adequate access like roads and bridges, and even things like restroom facilities. So early on, taxes carried most of the burden to provide the financial backing for national parks. Over the decades, more and more people wanted to see these amazing places, and why not? The economy was rocking, and thanks to interstates, people were driving all over the country to see these national parks. And over the past 30 years, people escape our modern technological age by visiting national parks. And it makes sense that millions of visitors cause a lot of wear and tear. But while the popularity of national parks increased, there came a point when the federal government wasn't willing to give national parks more money. Now that might not make sense, but let me explain. National parks have often been accused of mismanagement. Like all government agencies, sometimes funding the National Park Service becomes a political tool. It's easy to forget sometimes that the National Park Service is a government agency, so they have to lobby and fight for their portion like every other government agency. And that's kind of frustrating for the National Park Service. The National Park Service represents an economic stimulus package to local economies all over the U.S. Why shouldn't they get the money they need to maintain parks? The National Park Service fights dirty like every other government agency. To get favorable government funding, the Park Service will restrict or limit access to certain areas or attractions, claiming it's because they simply don't have the funds. This gets national park enthusiasts fired up and they call their representatives. And this works. However, let's be honest, having this kind of a tool at their disposal is kind of dangerous too. We should never forget that government waste and mismanagement is a real issue, and the National Park Service is no exception. Look, it happens. They're not superheroes or anything. What makes this difficult is that the National Park Service has a perfect marketing tool, and they know it too. When we think of the Grand Canyon, we think of the National Park Service. When we think of the Smoky Mountains, we think of the National Park Service, and it goes on and on. If you love nature, it's easy to love the National Park Service and to be trusting of their policies, philosophy, and management. That's why most people see the National Park Service as a benevolent, above political strife organization, but that isn't always the case. They're a government agency. They mess up sometimes. It's easy to assume that Great Smoky Mountain National Park needs to eliminate roadside parking while charging for their official parking. Why? Because they say so. And if you question their motives, then you don't love nature, you don't love the environment, you don't love our national parks. That's un-American. But it's our job to evaluate what they're telling us. I love national parks, but the National Park Service is an agency of the government and a wealth generator that wields tremendous political power, and they flex that power, and visitors are often stuck with the consequences. A lot of people see any attempt by Great Smoky Mountain National Park to charge fees for anything as an underhanded way of subverting the law. What law, you might ask? Stick around, because this will start to make a lot more sense in the next segment. Why doesn't Great Smoky Mountain National Park charge an entrance fee like, let's say, Shenandoah National Park? Because they can't. In 1951, the state of Tennessee transferred Little River Road and Newfound Gap Road to the park with a deed restriction preventing tolls on either road. Then in 1994, a federal law, Title 16, prevented entrance fees as long as toll roads were outlawed. An entrance fee would take an act by the Tennessee state legislature, but parking fees are left to the discretion of the National Park Service. Okay, first, it's highly unlikely that the Tennessee state legislature will ever revoke Title 16. Not if they want to stay in office. See, Cherokee National Forest in East Tennessee started charging parking fees about 30 years ago. At first, people did what they were told and paid the fees, but then there was some mismanagement, and it was a scandal, so the fees went away. Title 16 is here to stay, but it may be that Great Smoky Mountain National Park's parking fees are still in violation of the intent of Title 16. The idea was to give everyone unrestricted access to Smoky Mountain National Park, and stopping along the way is a part of that access. In a recent interview, Great Smoky Mountains National Park Superintendent Cassius Cash said, "We want to work with our visitors. This is by no means to be a barrier to come into the national park." But that's just not true. A parking fee is just an entrance fee repackaged. And think about it, once parking fees are established, they can and will go up in price. Now, if you're totally sold on the idea of paying to park for the sake of the environment, you might want to think about that for just a moment. Eventually, people are going to get fed up with not being allowed to park on the side of the road. But there simply isn't enough parking. Trust me, in the summer, roadside parking is necessary. People will demand more parking, and Great Smoky Mountains National Park will eventually concede. They'll increase parking fees to pay for more parking lots. And parking lots are bad for the environment on many levels, in some ways worse than roadside parking. In the meantime, enforcement of the new policy is going to cost a lot of money too. More park rangers are necessary to keep people from parking on the side of the road. Parking fees aren't just parking fees. It's another layer of structure that provides no real value, not even enough value to pay it forward. Okay, I get it. This content is a little heavy for our channel, and it's a lot more political than, well, any of our content. But it's an interesting conversation, and I'm really curious as to what you think. Are you for or against parking fees in Great Smoky Mountains National Park? Please let us know in the comments. Let's really get a polite conversation going about this. I don't mind being wrong. Trust me, it's happened a few times before. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button, and be sure to leave a comment. Here's some more of our videos. My name is Bill Marion, and this is A Nose for Life.